Here's the deal with my papa.
All right, well, thank you, Jordan, for that introduction again, and welcome everyone to episode 3 of Here's the Deal with Danny Sitters. Danny, here we are again. Can you believe it?
I'm actually a little bit surprised, but thankful to still be a part of this. So, yes, episode 3, here we go. Ready for it.
This is awesome. I'm Jeff, not the youth minister, Adair here at Heartland Church Christ, and here we are with Danny again, of course.
Good morning.
Danny, you had a great sermon on Sunday. Thank you again for that message.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start off with what's your favorite Bible story as a kid and now? Because it's probably not the same, but it could be.
Oh, so I guess I'd probably say as a kid, my favorite Bible story would have been Daniel in the lion's den.
Oh, yes, of course.
The idea of getting thrown in with lions and the fear that brought, just hearing the story, but God closing their mouths, the mouths of the lions. So, yeah, I'd probably say Daniel in the lion's den, but now my favorite story is the fish that ate the children.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So, by the way, that's an echo back to the sermon Sunday about my 3-year-old granddaughter Jordan. If you haven't heard that story, you got to go back and look at it, watch it, because I've got pictures of it. But Jordan was not going to be eaten by the big fish, and so she avoided that and got an apple. So anyway, I invite you to go back and listen to it.
That's a good one. That could be a lot of our favorite stories now, I'm sure, that the fish eating the children. And so, in your sermon, you mentioned how our stories shape us and how they can become our controlling narratives in our lives. I wanted to let's start. Can we start off with that? And we'll give a little brief summary of what we're going to expand on today. Exactly.
Sure. So the lesson title was "I Need a New Story." And so I went through and I talked about my life growing up, in particular within the church, of hearing all the stories of being in church all the time and listening to the fascinating, the wonderful, the supernatural, the frightening, the terrifying stories. And so my early year, and for all of us, our early years shape how we see everything.
True.
So it shaped how I understood God and how I viewed others and how I viewed the world. And so the point that I was trying to make is, you might, it's the story is based on my life experiences with all the people that I meet. I tell a story. It's the story of my past. It's the story of who I am.
Yeah.
And quite often, we are in need of a new story. And so what I was trying to communicate was our stories do shape us. They are the controlling narratives in our life. And again, so what I mean by that, and maybe a little repetitive here, but what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about others, what we believe about the world we live in, what we believe about God. And all of this, our experiences, our upbringing, words that we heard from others when we were young and growing up, words of blessing and words that would tear us down. Those are all part of it. The people that we lived with and the people that we hung around. It would include the successes that we've had, the failures that hurt us, neglect, if we experience that, or support or encouragement. All of those factors go into shaping who we believe we are, and as a result, the story we tell about ourselves. And we all have a controlling narrative. Right. If you just spend any amount of time around somebody and you pay attention, have ears to hear, let them hear, you'll hear the story about what a person believes. If we pay attention to our own words, we'll hear the story come out about what we believe.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to understand that if somehow we were able to change past events or change people that we encountered in the past, we would radically change the person.
Wow.
Right now, it's not possible. But if those things were to change, the person that we are today would be radically different. And I think about when we first came into this world as a little child,
Yeah.
we were different. We really didn't. We didn't have a lot of fear, if any.
Right.
We'd tackle the world. You know, I'm climbing monkey bars, falling off on my head and elbow, and you climb right back up.
That's
and
right.
we're learning to ride bicycle. We were so excited about it, and we fell and scraped every part of our body. but we were different. But then life happened, right? I mean, things began to happen to us, and we start putting two and two together, and we begin to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and who I am and who my family is.
Yeah.
And what kind of circles that I run in this world, and I compare myself to others, and all of that starts to take place. Again, that's what I call life happening.
Yeah.
And we began to come up with an idea about who we are, and quite often what our weaknesses are. And as a result, then, we tell the story. So when we were young, we weren't scared necessarily of life or people or the big fish that eats children.
That's right.
That didn't scare us. It didn't scare her. She just wasn't going in.
Yeah.
I'm not going in there. And so over time, then all of that, of course, begins to change, and our story is developing, our guiding narrative in life. And again, if we just take time to pay attention to what we say, we'll begin to hear this story, right? So Jesus would say, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Right.
And but what we believe, I mean, you think about this, just focus on this or contemplate. What we believe is tied to our story.
True.
There's a direct connection between the two. So our story then is what happened to us, and life is all about story. Everything is about story.
Yeah.
My entire life is a story. Your life, Jeff, is a story. Things that happened in this country, and they're all communicated in the form of a story, which means then that I am the interpreter of my story.
Oh, yeah.
We are interpreters of our story.
That's right.
And if that's the case, then, if we're interpreters of the story, we have the power then to determine what our stories mean, and thus how we move forward.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which is the key.
Yeah.
I'm the interpreter of it.
Yeah, being I've been for people out there listening, people have been stuck in that trying how to figure out how to move forward. Something that helped me personally would be I was asking what my passions are, and then trying to figure out what they are, and then looking for ways to glorify God in that way. Just trying to reassess my own life and figuring out how to move forward with the passions I have. So just a little thing that helped me along the way.
Yeah, no, very good, and thank you for sharing that. I think about people that I know. So I have a very close friend who grew up with some of his brothers and sisters, but most of his life he was separated from them. His parents were divorced. They couldn't afford him. So he moved from mom to dad to stepmom to grandma to aunt to uncle. And during the time of his schooling years, he probably lived in 30 different places until they could no longer take care of him, and they moved him on. And I remember he was telling me he was living in the back of his car, living in the back seat of his car during his last few years of high school. He had nowhere to live. Wow. But I didn't want anybody to see that, so he parked a block or two away from school, and after school he would begin to walk a different direction, walk all the way around the block and get in his car. And that's his story, and you say, well, you have no chance in life. Today he is a high-ranking official in the United States military. Oh, wow. Who directs thousands upon thousands of people. Because he understood at some point in his life he's the interpreter of his story.
Right, yeah.
I have a good friend who is has a PhD, marriage and family counseling. And it took him a long time to get there, because even as he was progressing through, his story was that he came to this conclusion: I'm stupid. I'm not smart. And yet he's in PhD studies battling these mental demons every day. But he changed the narrative. He changed the story. Wow. Yet, how many people do we know that you talk to that their story is always, I can't, no, that's not me. Well, no, that just won't work for me because, right? And that word because, becomes huge. So I think it's important at this point to say that we can learn how to reinterpret our story, but dealing with the story is a process.
Yeah,
it's a process. It's not a one-time deal. There's some dirty work to do. There's some intensive work, some emotional work that's involved with it. But it can be done, and I would encourage you to, as we get to the end of this podcast, we'll give hopefully some practical tips about what to do. But make the decision. I want to take a look at it. And so it involves, I think, first looking backward. Turning around, looking backward, and emotionally, mentally, and spiritually dealing with the events that shaped my story.
Yeah, it is going to be pretty dirty. When you just mentioned looking backward, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually dealing with it, that's the first word that comes to my mind. Actually, is getting dirty, because that's what's going to happen.
It's dirty work.
Yeah. So, now in the sermon, you went all the way back to Genesis 1. I love the creation story. I love Genesis, just because the way that the Bible starts, in the beginning, God, and then, boom. So what exactly made you want to go back to Genesis 1 to begin the sermon?
Right. So in making the decision or making the statement, look, I need a new story. As I just said, I think it first involves looking backward, turning around and seeing those things that did shape us, right? That's the foundation upon which we stand. I'm just speaking in a very practical way here. Yeah. That's the foundation. So look back. Well, the farthest we can go back, right, is to the very beginning.
Right.
And I wanted to communicate that the creation story in Genesis 1 and 2 would have perked up the ears of those ancient listeners that heard it.
Okay.
Right? Because there were other ancient creation stories that were floating around.
Sure.
and different nations or different civilizations at that time would share that. And so the ancient Near East stories of creation had multiple gods, plural gods, and they created out of rivalry and killing and lust, and humans came a little bit later, but they were kind of a nuisance.
Yeah.
And humans understood their role as probably as a slave. But the idea is, we got to do whatever we can to keep the gods off our back. We don't want to disturb them.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Matter of fact, they don't want to make too much noise on earth, because if we disturb the gods and they get angry with us, they're up there wanting to party and have a good time.
Yeah.
Then they're going to hit us with catastrophe and disease and famine, and they will punish us.
Okay.
We sacrifice, we do rain dances, all this kind of stuff, so that we can keep the gods off our back. Those are when you look at those ancient stories, those are some of the common threads that exist among those stories. Well, when you compare those stories to Genesis 1 and 2, you are introduced to a one God, Yahweh. Right? It's the only God. He doesn't create because of war or violence or lust. No, this story is about love and care and commitment, and God taking the chaos that existed, the Hebrew tahu vavahu,
yes,
right, and creating beauty out of it and creating something that is good. And here's the deal. I just caught myself. Here's the deal. Human beings then were created in the image of God. That's mind-boggling.
That is.
Why would God create humans in the image of God? And again, as I went through the sermon, only the kings of of nations and empires, they were considered in the image of God. So they were the only ones that had the words of God. You listened to them because they spoke, on behalf of God.
Okay.
But now Yahweh creates all humans in God's image. Great value.
Yes.
God entrusted human beings with a lot.
Yeah.
And then he says, now, here's the task. I've created. It's good. Now go subdue this place. Right? Go work it. Go co-create. Take care of it. Further it along. And no, again, ancient listener would have ever fathomed that the God of the universe would actually function this way. And so God places a lot of value in human beings. Several weeks ago I preached on that. God is basically saying, I believe in you.
Yeah.
I believe in you. I've given you everything. That's the beginning. That's how all of us entered this world. That is the story.
The story, there you go. Yeah.
That is the story. So as a result, we say that the world is good, but not necessarily perfect. I mean, we can look around.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. But God gave us the responsibility of helping this creation to reach its full potential. And just think about, historically, where we've come from since the Garden of Eden to the year 2021.
Right.
And all of the things that we have created using the materials that God created.
Right.
So, we're not the original creator. We were created to be co-creators with God to take this place toward its potential.
Yeah.
It's an incredible idea. So, going back, looking backwards, going back to deal with our story must go all the way back to the beginning. And taking God seriously in how God views us, what God thinks, how God loves us, the value that God has placed within us as beings that were created in God's image. Yeah. And so again, I say that's the story. It often, though, gets distorted.
Yeah, very much so. Good, easy analogy for the reaching its full potential and taking creation is kind of how I felt when Sarah became pregnant. This enormous responsibility of taking this human life and helping it reach its full potential through Jesus and everything. So that's just when you were talking about that. That's what I thought about.
Yeah, good.
Good. The horrible things that I thought about when Sarah first became pregnant, and then I was like, oh, it's not so bad after all. Just fear, that little thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. How am I ever going to raise a child?
Right.
How can I afford it? That's another question that comes to mind.
I'm glad I'm not alone in that, so I appreciate that, Danny. Thank you.
Yes. I had to go through it 4 times. So
okay, there you go. Wow, all right. Let's keep it moving along here. So what are some practical insights that to help us reinterpret our story? Because that is something that's just fascinating. And of course, my former life is new now, so I love all the practical ways. So do you have any practical insights for us?
So I think something that is important to remember, a good place to start, is that the present, this present moment, is all about perception.
Oh, yeah.
All about interpretation. The world that we live in at the moment is our interpretation.
That's right. I've always heard the great prophet Vince McMahon of WWE said, "Perception is reality." So when you say that is that's what comes to my mind.
It is. Perception is reality.
Yeah.
So, the story is told 150 years ago. 2 guys take off to Africa. They're shoe salesmen. And they get on the plane and they fly over there and they attempt to sell shoes.
Okay.
It's not easy to say, sell shoes. And after a couple of weeks, one salesman sends a telegraph back to the home office and said, "People here don't wear shoes. It's hopeless.
Huh?
They don't wear shoes."
Yeah.
The same day, the other salesman, unbeknownst to the first, sends a telegraph back to the home office and says, people here don't wear shoes. Endless opportunity.
Ah, there you go.
It's all perception.
Yeah.
It's all interpretation. And so if that's the case, then our past can be reconstructed. Our past can be reinterpreted so that we can make it fit, right, our present narrative.
Yeah, okay.
We can change it. We created it.
Right.
We can change it. The mind, right? Learning how to take every thought captive and learning to see the world with the eyes of our heart. Learning to see life and other people from God's perspective.
Yeah, there you
Right?
go.
Not from my perspective. I get it distorted.
Yeah.
I'm challenged at times in how I see myself or how I see God, then as a result how I see myself and as I see other people and the world around me. Where did all this come from? You know, I've wrestled with that. Where did it come? It's the story I'm telling.
Yeah.
You know, based on events that truly did happen, but I'm the interpreter of it. So what is the phrase I'm just thinking now? Attitudes are more important than facts.
Oh, yeah.
We used to say that all the time in youth ministry and with our students back in the 80s, right? A long time ago. We would say that together. Attitudes are more important than facts. So our past has been reconstructed. We're the ones that reconstructed it.
Yeah.
Okay? So that it fits our present narrative. And our future then is imagined. Right? It's not here yet. It doesn't exist. Right. But our future is imagined based on our past and our present.
Right.
We only have this moment. We only have the present time, you know, to live in and to be alive. The other two no longer exist. It's all about how we are going to interpret it.
Yeah.
How we're going to imagine it. Whichever word you want to do. So, but having said that, I think it's important to remember that the past, the present, and the future are all happening at the same time. Okay, now think about it.
Yeah.
They are all happening. All can change when we change our story.
Okay.
Now think about it. So the facts happened, right? A future's coming, but if we learn how to reinterpret our story and get a view of ourselves in the world from God's perspective, we'll change the past in how we imagine it.
Right.
Which changes my thoughts, it changes my emotions, it will change my behavior, it can change the way that I relate to others in this world.
Yeah.
So even though they're not here, they still are to a large degree based on, you know, what I think.
Yeah.
So when we change the meaning and the narrative of the past, we simultaneously change the narrative of our present, which significantly changes the future.
Right.
Okay, now you may have to rewind that and listen to it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, that is.
But that is the power that we have
Right.
as humans who are created in the image of God. And so we have the power today in the present moment to change those two. But this can happen because the story that we hold on to of ourselves is continually evolving and changing based on our experiences.
Right.
So I think you say as a result of that, the facts about the past, they don't change.
Right, they're there.
That's reality.
Yeah.
It happened to us. We succeeded. We hit the home run in the bottom of the 9th, you know, and now when I think back about the home run I hit as a kid, it went 500 feet,
That's
you know,
right.
when I was
Oh,
10
yeah.
years old. But still, I hit the home run.
That's right.
I mean, they don't change. But the story that we tell ourselves about them must and can change.
Yeah.
That, I think, is what is critical in this discussion today. So the question is that I would want you to ask yourself, does my story support me? You know, does my story help me? Or is my story that I'm telling hindering me?
Yeah.
I think that's somewhere that we have to begin.
And before we get started on that, but you know, that brings up some some research I've been just looking into for myself. It's called epigenetics, and
can you spell it?
I can. So you have genetics, then EPI at the beginning of it.
Yeah,
how about that? So it means it's on top of your genetics. So it's now I am not qualified to speak too depth into, but I'm going to try here. But it's the things that are on top of our genes that can change. Our genes can't change in our DNA, so that is there. But that ability on the epigenetics, they're finding out, can either turn them on or turn them off. So the things that our parents did as kids and what they did as adults shape what they did, obviously, and then shape their epigenetics. But it also, when they pass it on, because as two become one, they say in the Bible, have one life, there's one cell that begins, and then it breaks into other ones. Mm-hmm. The same reason that I have dimples, but Ethan does not. Just one is turned on and one is turned off. So they say that you can change the way that your epigenetics that you pass on. So say someone is predisposed, their mother and father had the gene for addiction, and they pass it on. They still continue to do that when they were conceiving, and then the child has the ability to change the way that their behavior and change their epigenetics so that they don't pass it on. So fascinating stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just recently coming out here in the last, I would say, 10 years or so that they're finding this stuff out. But yeah, this is going along with all this whole new story stuff.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow, good stuff. So I think having had you go through that discussion, I think from here on out we need to call this podcast "Here's the Deal with Jeff, Not the Youth Minister Adair." I mean, you took this thing to a whole different level there.
I'll say when Ethan was coming around, and I was being a former drug addict, I didn't want to pass on those things that I found to be a hindrance to my life. So that's where it led me.
Yeah, it's incredible. Isn't it fascinating how many different fields of study? Quite often each field of study is independent. They're on their own. They're in their own labs. They're coming up with the conclusions and writing their books and coming up with their own research papers.
Right.
When you begin to look at what some might refer to as interdisciplinary studies, they
right.
bring them together. There's so much truth from so many areas of life, and that is why we never stop learning. We never stop growing.
Yes.
We never stop reading and writing and discussing ideas like this.
Right.
How can it help me, reinterpret my story?
Yeah, live out the life that Jesus wants us to live.
Yeah. So, good stuff. I like that. So, so here's what I'd like to do the rest of the time that we have.
All right.
Where would I begin? What can I do today? How do I begin to change my story, which means ultimately changing the perception of myself? How do I get back to the beginning where I am believing and living the life God created me to live? And I would say I'm no expert either. I will tell you that I am out there on the playing field learning.
There you go. Yeah.
As we go.
Yeah.
I wrestled with several things in my life that happened, and family origins and failures that I've had, and lack of accomplishment in some areas, and just letting things, not finishing things that I started. Sometimes it's not following through on commitments that are made. It all piles up within us, and adds layer upon layer upon layer. So I've read, I've thought through, I've journaled before, and so what I'm saying is I'm in the midst of working on this, even as we're having this discussion. So, forgive me if I sound like, hey, I got this all together. Now here's what you do.
Right.
Now it's your turn. No, I'm in here with you.
Yeah.
Please know that. Had a 2-hour discussion this morning, and it was along these lines of how do we continue to grow and reshape and reinterpret. So I'm no expert. I will tell you a couple of names that I would say if you wanted some more information. Lori Gottlieb has been helpful to me in my journey of reinterpreting events in life, and some of the things that she has said and written. But here's what she says. Here's our main problem, okay?
Okay.
We tend to be unreliable narrators of our own lives.
Well, that's
Think
true.
about it.
Yeah.
We say, well, I'm my own worst critic.
Yeah.
Right? I am my own worst storyteller. So I can't tell you how many times I've been either talking to someone who's much wiser than me, and I'm telling them, about my life and who I am, and they will say, Danny, stop. That's not true. They might as well go say you're lying.
Right.
Stop. That's not true. And so they kind of hit me with a compassionate truth bomb.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This explodes on me. You're not telling the truth. That's not who you are. That is your interpretation. Right? You're just telling your story that you believe.
That you believe, yeah.
And by the way, a good point, we'll get to it a little bit later. That's why we need each other.
Yeah, definitely.
We need each other to spur one another on and love one another and care for one another and support one another. So we tend to be very unreliable narrators of our own story.
Yeah.
Because we're in the fish tank. We can't see beyond, the glass walls. And so we all walk around with stories about our lives, the choices that we made, and why things went wrong in our lives, and why we treated, another person the way we did. We all have those stories. Because the stories are a way that we make sense of the world.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure out how to make sense of this world.
Right.
And especially in the year 2020, I think this is so applicable.
Yeah.
We're struggling to make sense of this new world that we find ourselves in. Right? And so we're telling the stories. And by the way, if you spent any time on social media or listening to the news, there's a whole bunch of stories.
You'll get those, yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, tell me what you believe about it. I can show you a story that somebody else is talking about.
That's true.
Really,
Yeah.
It's amazing. So it's how we make sense of the world. But if you and I get the story wrong, we will find ourselves stuck.
Yeah. Wow.
We'll find ourselves stuck if I get the story wrong, right? Which means if I misinterpret it,
Yeah.
if I look to the worst, if I tell a story of no hope. If I tell the story of, well, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
Well, that's just my family.
It is what it is a popular phrase.
It is what it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll find ourselves stuck. And so let me give you another name, Dan Sullivan. He offers this great analogy in two words. He explains the gap and the gain.
Okay.
Right. So the gap, where most people live their lives, they live it in the gap. The gap is always looking at what's missing in my life.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is missing. This isn't here.
Yeah.
It's telling of what I lack,
Okay.
what I don't have. It's telling the story of what's bad in the world. By the way, can you look around and see the bad? Yes.
Yeah.
At any point in history, the bad has been there. But living in the gap is what I don't have, what's missing, that time, looking at the bad side of life. But we often don't look at what could be and how the past has set us up for future success.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Right? We tend to look at the past as, well, that's limiting me.
Right.
Those are mistakes. I can't overcome that. Where he says we have to, instead of looking at the gap, we have to learn to look at the gain, the ability to look back and see progress. At any point, okay, reality,
Yeah.
I can look back a year from today, 5 years, 10 years, and if, now it may take somebody else helping me do it.
Right.
Maybe
yeah.
they point it out to me.
There you go.
But I've made progress.
Yeah.
You've made progress. We've made progress. Now, it might be very small increments, which is okay.
Sure.
Right? Because we're not looking for perfection.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. We're not looking for perfection. Let me say that for the third. We're not looking for perfection, just progress. And so if and when I look back, I can see progress. That's a gain. The events of the past are still the same.
Yeah.
It's the reality. But now I'm starting to reinterpret it differently. So somebody asked me, how's your life? How's your world going? Now I begin to speak of progress.
Yeah.
Right? I speak of the gain instead of speaking of the gain. Oh, yeah, my life's a mess, and I don't have any money, and my family, we're just not educated, and there's just not, it takes money to make money, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I want to speak of the gain. That's a small thing that we can do each day. Look back and look at the progress. So again, progress, not perfection, seeing benefits of where I've been and what I've been through. But this takes disciplined effort to look through the event, right? Any event in the past,
Yeah.
and to be able then to see the potential personal growth and the actual personal growth,
Right.
That's been taking place. I think about how many stories have you heard of heartache and failure, addiction, devastated life,
Yeah.
and they work on the gain. They go wherever they need to get help, and they start overcoming. And you get to the end of their story of all their heartache and pain and triumph and success, and they say, "I wouldn't change my life for the world."
Yeah.
Quite a few of them say this.
Sure.
And when you first hear it, you're like, "Oh, you lost your mind."
Right.
No, you're not serious. They're serious.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change this for the world. Why? Because they learned again how to reinterpret
Yeah.
and move forward. And if it had not been for those events in the past, they would not be who they are today as a success.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the circumstance, the events. It has everything to do with what story am I telling?
Yeah.
That's the power. That's the beauty in all of this. But we tend to believe that our circumstances and our past shape our story and ultimately then shape our future.
That's true, though.
We get stuck.
Yep.
The truth is, the way that we narrate our lives shape what they will become.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Our words are powerful.
yes.
They are, Moses tells the people of Israel in Deuteronomy, so these words, they're not just words written down. These are your life. Right? They are our life.
Yeah.
Our words, they are our life. So, let me say this. I think it's important to remember. There is danger and there is hope in our stories.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
choose.
Right.
It's dangerous to speak to speak a story that doesn't have the hope within it,
Yeah.
because it leads us down the path we're gonna end up going.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how we tell them. So back to Gottlieb, she says that that most people's stories revolve around two key themes. All right,
Okay.
freedom and change. So when you think about freedom, we all believe to some degree, in general, that we have a large portion of freedom. Right? God created us free will and free choice, and especially in this country, we have freedom.
Yeah.
Except, and I think she's dead on here, we have all this freedom except when it comes to my problem at hand.
Yes.
Yeah, then we feel like, well, I don't have any freedom.
Yeah.
I'm trapped. I'm stuck. Nobody's ever had this problem. Nobody's ever gone through this event.
Right.
Nobody's ever had this history. And so we start then telling additional stories. Well, everybody's life, is better than mine, or I'm just an imposter. If people knew
Right.
my events, my past,
That's us.
nothing ever seems, to work out for me.
Yeah.
And sadly, one of the worst stories that we can tell is I'm unlovable,
Yeah, that's true.
Which, by the way, ultimately means when we tell these stories, we're cheating God. Think about it.
Yeah,
We're cheating God, and we're cheating ourselves.
definitely.
Now, I'm on a roll here. We're also then cheating the people around us,
Yeah.
who need to see the image bearer of God
Right.
in their lives.
Yeah.
But we can't get there because of the stories that we're telling. So yeah, so I'd say yeah, we are free, but freedom comes with responsibility. So again, the two challenges that we have in our story is freedom, and the other one is change. If we take responsibility, if I say, okay, I'm free to take responsibility for my story, then that means I have to change something.
Right.
All right. Now let that one sink in.
Yeah.
So now I've got to change. I've got to. We fear change.
Yes.
We don't like change. We like stability. We like homeostasis.
Yeah, there you
Everything stay the same routine, same lifestyle, same habits, all of that. We don't like to change. And even when it comes to our story, it might cause us a little fear. But change, that's the great challenge. And change is the story changer.
Okay, yeah.
It's the story changer. But to do so means that I come face to face and began working on overcoming the lies that I believed, which we could do a whole podcast on lies that we believe.
Right, yeah.
The fear that we have, the blame that we've cast on everyone and everywhere. So we got to overcome lies, fear, and blame in order to change. But that in itself scares us because it means now we're moving into the unknown. What happens to me if I change my story?
Yeah.
What really happens to me if I take seriously the challenge to live in the image of God, that I am valuable, I'm lovable, I've been called to subdue the world, the earth, that I have a level of importance, that I have something to say.
Right, yeah. Unique perspective.
Yeah. See, I want to tell you, saying it kind of scares me.
Yeah, so it is scary when you say it like that.
Yeah. It's a little bit frightening.
Because we can see the potential in it.
Right? So it's moving out. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It's moving out into the unknown, right? So this is the time of what was referred to as transition. So to change means I move into transition. I say, okay, I'm going to change the story. Well, I think it was William Bridges who has written several books on this topic of transition. And basically, transition is this middle ground. It's this period of fluidity that exists between what was, which is no longer, and what will be, which is not here yet.
Yeah.
So in the middle is this concept of transition. I'm changing. I'm becoming. It feels like I don't have a safety net under me. I don't have a foundation to stand on.
Yeah.
So somebody that loses a loved one are immediately thrust into transition. What was is no longer.
Correct. Okay.
Person's not here. The life that I had, the routine that I had.
Yeah.
What life will be like maybe in a year, 5 years, 10 years is not here yet. I'm living in transition.
Okay. Great analogy.
See, that's why change often does scare us, and it is often why we shy away from it.
Yeah.
I don't want the unknown. I don't want to deal with the possible suffering here of changing my story.
Yeah.
Changing my story might mean that I end up changing relationships with people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million things that could possibly happen when we do so. So, if I could give you 3 or 4 or 5 things, here's what I would say. How do we do this? I would say start in prayer to God, prayerfully, and then courageously turn around and look at your story. Look at your past. Write down those events.
Definitely, yeah.
And then ask the question, how did this event shape me? So I'll just give you, for instance, growing up as a preacher's kid, and I went to a public school, I got teased quite a bit. I got made fun of about being you can't do that, right? Back in the day, you can't go dancing. You can't go to the skating rink, can't you? Because you're a preacher's kid. That'd be a sin, wouldn't it? And some of it was just in honest jesting and joking around. But that became my story.
Right.
I'm not like everybody else. I'm different. Now, and that's in a good way, ultimately.
Yeah.
But that became part of my story. So I have to look at these events. How did it shape me? How did events like that cause me to move, to pull back into my shell, so to speak, into my box, and not want to speak out, not want to be seen, not want to be made fun of?
Right.
But to change the story, I got to look at this. God, help me to look back to the events of my life, but, then ultimately to look past the events of my life to creation, to who you created me. But I'd say courageously take a look at your story, ask how has that shaped me. But more importantly, the third thing I wrote down, what is my operating narrative surrounding the events of my life? Right? I'd say here's a good exercise. Get by yourself in the shower or in the office, nobody can hear you, and just start telling your story out loud to yourself.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Pay attention to the words you use. Is it a story of, life and joy and relationships and growth?
Yeah.
Mixed in with the challenges, some failure, some hurt? Or is it more about disappointment and hurt and it'll never happen for me and I just can't, and this isn't fair.
Yeah.
This person did that, mixed in with a little joy, little hope. Tell your story. See what it sounds like. I would also say this then. Share with someone, a mentor. Share with somebody. Again, that's why we need each other. That's why there's so many one another verses within Scripture.
Yeah.
But share with somebody who has a level of spiritual maturity and someone who can speak those compassionate truth bombs right back at you.
I love that term. Yeah.
In love.
Right.
They say, whoa, stop. No, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's not the truth. That's not who you are. You can overcome that. And so then I think what happens is the process, we begin the process of reinterpreting our story. And we then begin to look at what good has and will come out of my past.
There you
go. So let me leave you with this. And I'll stop because I'm almost out of breath. Leave you with 2 points. One is this. We are our story. Okay, let me say it again. We are our story. We would not be who we are today without where we've come from, our past, the circumstances, the situations. That's who we are. The past is real. Events are facts. The past shapes us. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But it is not because of the eternal truths or strongholds of the past, but rather because of our interpretation of our past and then ultimately our future.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are our story. Okay? Yet, point number 2 is we are not our story.
Yeah.
We are our story, but we are not our story. We are greater than our story.
Yeah.
We are more valuable than our story. Okay? Our story is nothing more than our interpretation of what's happened to us. All right? So we can begin to peel away, the constructed, that we constructed, the constructed, the unhelpful beliefs and interpretation. Really what these things do is they get in the way of my real identity that is in Jesus Christ.
Right. That's true.
So yeah, you are your story. Guess what? You can change it.
Yeah.
But you're not your story. We are believers in Jesus Christ. We are created in God's image. And we are commissioned for such a time as this.
Yeah.
I mean, really, there's a reason, there's a purpose, why we're here. So our story is just what we say about ourselves. That's it.
Yeah.
We created it. We can deconstruct it.
Yeah.
We can change it. We can reinterpret it. My true identity is what God says about me, regardless of the situations I've gone through, my past, my history. That's what my true identity is.
Yeah,
What God said. That's why we want to turn back, and ultimately go all the way back to the very beginning, and not believe the lies. The lies are what stop us so often. So I will tell you that in thinking about this, the first step, and that was what this sermon was about, was I need a new story. I need to look backwards.
Yeah.
But what happens when we listen to Jesus and look forward into the future? Does that have impact on us to change our identity? And I think the answer is yes. And so this coming Sunday,
Oh, yes.
I want to look at what Jesus said about our future.
Awesome. All right.
So
I want to be a great spot to end the episode. I do have one question from Clark. He wrote in and asked, since you brought up origin stories in your sermon, what do you notice about this region, the Kansas City metro area, that is different from your Louisiana origins?
Okay, so the origin story. So my story that I tell about myself would be found in the Cajun state of Louisiana. Those were my formative years, and as a child, and middle school and high school.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where my story formed early on. Now, my origin story in Kansas City sounds something like this when it first happened. Okay, it sounded like this. I cannot believe we live this far north. This is unbelievable. We're 8 hours, we're just 8 hours away from Minneapolis, St. Paul. That was mind-boggling to us. So and it also includes living in this metropolitan area. This is the largest city we have ever lived in.
Okay.
But that then includes, the restaurants here, the barbecue here, the places to go and shop. Well, I'm actually now speaking for my wife. The Legends and all those places they love to go.
Oh yeah.
So it's been fun living here. It's been fun getting to know people that live in a different part of the country. So you guys all have an accent, right? You speak differently. You speak funny. Houses are different here. There's, they're 3 stories, and you better have strong knees if you move to Kansas City to climb all the stairs that are here. So that's been different. But here's my origin story that from Kansas City is dawned on me. There are people who love Jesus everywhere that are striving to become more like him and learning how to deal with themselves in the process.
Yeah.
And in that sense, in that way, it's no different. People are people.
Yeah.
We're all image bearers of God.
Right.
We all fail. We all sin. We all mess up. But it's just been a blessing to, again, move to a different geographical location and see the same hearts of people who are striving to be more like Jesus, and now learning how to reinterpret their story, to line it up, to have it more in line with God's story about us.
There you go.
So I guess that's what I'd say.
I like that. That's a great answer. And, great origin stories, regardless, like you said, the hearts of everyone and moving to a new area. That God loves us, regardless we say soda pop or soda pop altogether. Things like that. It doesn't matter where we go, he still loves us just the same.
It's Coke down in the South.
See, there you go, yeah.
I will tell you this, there are fewer cowboy boots in Kansas City than there are down south.
Yeah, that's true. Wait till the American Royal comes around. You'll see a lot more coming to town. That's for sure. Danny, thank you again. This is fun. This is great. I love doing this each week. So this is fun.
Thank you. I do too.
Thank you for your sermon on Sunday. Thank you for expanding. I know you spend a lot of time on your sermon, so I really want to thank you for that. And let everybody out there listening know that if you guys have any questions for Danny, I'm gonna throw this on you. If you have any question for Danny. about a sermon, anything, send it to HCOCDigitalMedia@gmail.com, and I'll put a link down to our YouTube channel as well. Make sure you guys stay up to date on us, and we'll be talking about Jesus and what he thinks about our future. So I'm looking forward to that. So, Danny, thank you very much, man. Have a great week.
Absolutely. God bless you.